I think it's worth understanding why it is that ungoverning and the deconstruction of the administrative state is possible. What makes it so vulnerable? It delivers everything to people, right? There's social security checks and their health care and their protection against foreign governments. At any rate, why is it so vulnerable? And there are simple little reasons. When you go to school and you're learning about the parts of the government, there's the executive and the legislative and the judicial, and there's nothing about the administrative state, right? Which makes government work. So that's one reason. It's also vulnerable, though, because people hate bureaucracies. And many people, most of the time, when they have any interaction with a bureaucratic agency, whether it's over taxes or registering to vote or registering an automobile or fighting about your social security check, it's unpleasant. I mean, it puts demands on you. You have to produce documents and evidence and so on. If you don't do it, you don't get what you need. People are rude. Often it's rank injustice perpetrated on you. So people hate bureaucrats. You know, when somebody wrote, this isn't my line, but somebody wrote, you never hear people saying we're going to go out and have a parade to defend the bureaucrats, right? I mean, it doesn't happen. And people don't know what it does. So there's a lot of ignorance and a lot of personal, readiness to be personally and antithetical to bureaucracy. And often for good reasons, people hate all the regulations. So ungoverning is not about getting rid of unnecessary regulations. It's not making government more efficient or more just, right? Ungoverning is just destructive. And I think there is behind all of this a kind of myth about the horror of bureaucracy that comes to us through literature. And in this book, I talk about two things. I use Dickens, this is the beginning of the modern state and the bureaucracy, and Dickens opposed it in every novel he wrote. And I'll give a quote from him. Up until Václav Havel, for example, where the administrative state and governing and bureaucracy was associated with communist control, right, with control. But in every case, bureaucracy was seen as irrational, and time-consuming and obstructionist, and not as doing any good. And so I like to read this quote from Charles Dickens' novel Little Dorrit, which features what he calls the all-powerful circumlocution office. The circumlocution office, where the civil servants who work there are dedicated to a negative mission, how not to do it. And this is the quote from Dickens. The department's output is always no. This is a quote. Numbers of people were lost in the circumlocution office, unfortunates with wrongs or with projects for the general welfare, who in slow lapse of time and agony had passed safely through other public departments and got referred at last to the circumlocution office and never reappeared in the light of day. And then Dickens wrote to his 1857 edition that this novel is not just it's not just melodrama. He says it's a realistic description of the irrationality of bureaucracy. Here's what he writes. If I might offer any apology for so exaggerated a fiction as the circumlocution office, I would seek it in the common experience of an Englishman. And so here we go with the sort of deep vulnerability of the administrative state and of governing in practice.